I think there are two things that any member of any nation would want, that is to live in peace and to prosper. And so the role of government must be to provide the security of the nation so that economic growth can take place, and that enables prosperity. And if peace is assured, then there are a number of economic models proven over history that will allow prosperity, much of which is detached from the role of government. What we've seen over time, through history throughout, is that if peace is not assured, then increasingly government needs to, or the nation needs to take control of its broader manufacturing base. And I think we're going through a really interesting period at the moment where what we're seeing in the Ukraine war currently is a real question about whether or not the relationship between the state and the defense industrial base, or the economic or the agricultural base, is as secure as it needs to be. And maybe we need to consider a shift in that relationship, because the seduction of the just enough, just in time economic model, which allows you to do more across a wider range of opportunities, actually looks pretty fragile when you reach into a pocket to discover that the assumptions that you've developed for what war will look like prove to be wrong. And I think it's beholden upon us as military leaders to engage across with our industrial, commercial and government colleagues to work out whether the model we've got at the moment is actually in the right place. And that is bringing into it conversations about national resilience. And I see that, here we are in India, very supportive of their Made in India position, where Prime Minister Modi has been very clear that maybe it is time for India to consider again what resilience looks like. I don't read from that anything other, as my good friend Hari Kumar has said. India is reaching out for partnerships, but it is also making sure that it is personally resilient. And I think that's the sort of conversations we're all being forced into as we look at a far more complex and uncertain world.
Wonderful, excellent answer. Thank you so much. We are extremely close to being out of time, but can I throw, please, to the young fellows, Raisina, young fellows, and just take one question, I think perhaps for our panel.
Very much to the panelists. I have a question on critical undersea infrastructure. So roughly 95% of communications and data travels through undersea cables. And it's a really complex field, with cables being owned by a combination of private and state-owned entities. So we wanted to ask you about the options for cooperation on protecting such infrastructure. What are your views on the viable fora for cooperation regionally and globally, and especially considering the heavy investments of actors such as China in strategic locations, such as Gwadar port in Pakistan, for example?
Who wants to give a chance at that one, or should we take another question? I think we should take another question.
One more,
Yeah? Let's go one more.
Thank you very much. My name is Katerina Kritisova. I work at the European Leadership Network in London. And my question has to do with the global transition away from fossil fuels and what implications that will have on how militaries operate, because that shift is not often factored in our thinking about the future of warfare in academic scholarship. So my question is twofold. So how are we going to operate, deter and defend within net zero constraints in a few decades? What does it mean for the capabilities we need to be developing already today? And because you mentioned green fuel, so what does it mean for, how can we avoid interoperability challenges with allies and partners if our militaries don't move at the same speed and level of ambition on the road to net zero? Thank you.
Admiral Key, I think you had touched on that last question yourself previously. Did you want to start?
Yeah, so we're all citizens of the planet, and therefore we have an absolute obligation to look after the wonderful Earth in which we're privileged to live, and certainly, therefore, speaking for the United Kingdom and the Royal Navy, our commitment to reflect those obligations is really clear. The two patrol vessels we've got operating in the Indo-Pacific region at the moment, HMS Spey and HMS Tamar, are the greenest ships we've ever built. Now, they're still running on marine diesel, but we've ensured that in many ways we are minimizing their carbon footprint And the engine spaces are designed to really embrace emerging technologies as they develop. And the global shipping industry is really wrestling with this. And it has to wrestle with it in a holistic fashion, because quite soon we will find, and I'm talking years rather than months, we'll find that some nations will make determinations about whether or not you can use their ports, how you can operate in their waters if you are not reflecting some of the obligations we have. And of course, across the Pacific region and through the Indo-Pacific region are another number of countries who are affected by climate change impact far more than they are by some of the contested activity that is going on territorially around the world. So we are obliged to play into this space because it's going to impact how we operate into the future and where we operate. And so we have to weave that through in everything. It's not discretionary for us just because we happen to be operating in military services.
Thank you very much. Did anyone? Yes, please. Thank you.
For the challenge of undersea infrastructure, undersea cables, pipelines, and everything else, it becomes very simple if you know who has done what, where. And so I think the first challenge for all of us is to just make sure we have a better understanding of what infrastructure does exist under the waters. And there's an incredible collection of different sensors and organizations, including a lot in the science and education community, that are able to track and understand activity on the water and under the water. And so I think the first place in any of that is to try and find a way to better understand the data that we do have, recognize that now that there is a potential threat there that's being realized in the case of Nord Stream 1 and 2. And so how do we create a method that allows us to understand what has happened and provide credibility so that it is believed when we assess that it is this person, this country, this actor has done this? And that's the starting place for action.
Yeah, there's 2 points to that though, right? So that's an after it happens thing.
Yeah.
The actions that have to go into account before it happens to protect it is really where we need to be focused, and we can learn a lot from each other. But there's a second part of this that's really concerning to me, and that is, there are nations out there that are willing to target critical infrastructure, civilians, as a part of gray zone or first steps in the time of crisis or conflict that is different than we've seen in the past. And we need to understand that that's a possibility, whether it's shutting off water, taking other actions against our population's critical infrastructure, fuel distribution. Again, there's a long list. We ought to understand that there are nations out there willing to target and take action against our civilians as a part of their plan.
Yeah.
And that's concerning to me. So I think, like everything else, our teams working together, we can put in place resiliency, redundancy, flexibility, and protections to ensure we're protecting our people.
Yeah, well, that's a terrific place to end. I am so sorry that I have been a terrible time manager. I've probably made you all late for lunch, but please thank this wonderful panel for a great conversation. Thank you for your frankness.
Thank you. Could I request our speakers and our moderator to come in front for a family photo? For the rest of you, please move to your